We're just going to do a T-bar application demonstration, all right? The tools that we want you guys to be comfortable using when you leave, this is very standard water-based application tool called the T-bar. Comes in 12-inch, 18-inch, and 24-inch, although we use 12-inch probably 90% of the time, right? Even on gymnasiums, we'll probably only go up to the 18. 24 just tends to be too big. So 12-inch snowplow tool. You'll see as we use it, why it's called that is because we pour a line of finish, like a big line of snow, right down the floor. And as you use this at an angle, that excess runs off the front just like a snowplow, though some of you people from warmer climates might not know what that looks like. But we always want to keep that wet edge, okay? So very standard tool, especially on strip and plank flooring. On parquets and stuff, more difficult layouts, we tend to use the roller. And the cut-in pad. But just a couple things about, just job site, some of the stuff that we want to do before we coat the floor. One of our commandments is keep the floor clean, right? Really crucial, I think, at this point that, we've done a good job sanding the floor. We may already have stain or a coat of sealer on it. So between each coat of finish, I want to keep the floor as clean as possible, especially when I'm using water-based, but even when I'm using oil or acid cure or moisture cure or whatever. But with water-based, especially Bonas, I don't have to abrade between every coat, right? So that's a lot of labor if you got to go in and abrade the floor, tack it to get it clean again, and then put another coat on. But if I can keep it as clean as possible and just tack it to get any residual dust off, then I can put my next coat on and I'm out the door waiting 2 or 3 more hours for it to dry, and I can come put another coat on. So some of the things that I'm going to do or we're going to do to make sure we have a clean floor, that we're not going to pull stuff out onto the floor while we're putting down finish. First thing I'm going to do is go around with the back vac, and I'm going to use the crevice tool and hit all the little crevices around the side, all right? Especially if this is my first coat after sanding, because everything up to this point has been dry, right? So I may think that I've gotten everything, all the dust and everything else, but any little crevices where I've got dust or regular dust bunnies and stuff are hiding in there, I may not have pulled those out yet. But I want to go around and make sure I do, because now that I've got wet going on the floor, especially puddles, if I happen to push a puddle up underneath some of my trim work or something and it comes back out, it's going to have anything else that was hiding in there in that puddle now, and now I'm going to have an issue. So first thing we're going to do is vacuum all around the sides with a crevice tool. Then when we tack the floor, what we want to do first, some guys will just grab the mop, start tacking, no thought process to it, no thought of logic or what are we trying to do or what are the steps here. So I always take a damp rag first, and I'm going to hand tack, on my knees all around the outside. Again, because what I'm trying to do is create kind of a safe perimeter for my tack mop. All right, so I hand tack first, and then we're going to go around the perimeter we're going to do the field with our tacking mop. Now, for you guys, I don't know if we've gone over this yet, but we have 2 different types of mop covers, not just green and blue, right? This is called a twist pile, okay, and it works really good wet for cleaning your floors. But this is called a cut pile. It's much finer, okay? And it works good also wet or dry, but really good dry because it has an electrostatic property to it that will pull dust to it and hold it there and not release it so much. Either of these, especially this one, when it's wet, can be really tough to push. And even when we're tacking, we want as smooth of a process across the floor as we can get. So I'm usually just going to tack with this one dry. Okay, so I've hand tacked around with my damp rag. Then myself or one of my guys, I guess this is the one that fits, we're going to tack the floor. And even when we tack, we're going to use a certain motion that I'm going to try to stay out of that safety zone, right? I don't want to take my tack mop, run it all the way to the wall, bump into the wall, and take some of that dust off. So now I'm going to create an even bigger safety zone with my first tack, my first pass with my tack mop. And then I'm going to go back and forth across the floor, making sweeps and always keeping my leading edge on my mop pointing in the same direction. If I push that mop up to the wall and then just turn around and start backing away with it, I may leave a little pile there, right? So again, it just makes sense to always keep that leading edge of your mop going in the same direction to keep all that stuff at the forefront of your tacking mop. Another tool that some guys use, and we used to have our own, but they're so accessible out there and really so cheap if you buy them in bulk, is just booties for your shoes. These ones are huge, so I don't really like the way that they look when we put them on, but we'll usually even take our shoes off when we coat. So some guys even have their own, coating shoes, coating socks, but you don't necessarily want to wear the same shoes that you're walking across the street and everything else in onto the floor that you're going to be coating. Another little thing that we do is, walk-off towels. So you can get these, good regular sized bath towels at Walmart for $2 or $3. So they can also help you in a pinch if you happen to get a lot of extra finish somewhere and you need something to soak up a lot of finish. But I always like the bright ones or the white ones so we can see, do I have stuff on my shoes? Is it coming off? And it also serves as a reminder to people walking on and off the floor, hey, wipe your shoes before you come on here because we're trying to keep it clean. So another thing that we do, and it's not that it's necessary, right? You should be able to use, and you can use Bona Finishes 99 times out of 100, and just with the medium strainer, we'll call it, that comes with it, that's going to be fine for blocking any dried particles that might be in the jug. Usually you're not going to get dried particles in the jug. But again, best practice, we always like to say, use a fine straining system or develop your own fine straining system. So we found one of the easiest things to do is take pantyhose. Okay, so if you go to Walmart, buy queen size sheer panty, sheer toe pantyhose, right? You get the most bang for your buck with that. And all you do is you take the medium strainer, you press it through the pantyhose, press that whole system down into your finish, and just trim it off with a utility knife. Now you've got a great fine straining system, and it might add, again, a couple pennies to each jug that you do, but to me it's worth that one time that you don't strain it and you're doing your last coat on, a couple thousand square feet of Brazilian cherry herringbone, and now you got particles, right? One job like that a year can pay for a lot of pantyhose. So at least as a best practice, always fine strain your last coat. All right, we fine strain every coat when we do jobs because, again, we think it's a best practice. It prevents a lot of work in between coats, just taking, any small particles and stuff out of there. But it's just part of keeping that floor clean, and we found that it works really well. Okay? One other thing before we actually start T-barring, I think we'll talk about this later on, but just having a game plan. So not just with water-based, but maybe more important because it's water-based and it dries faster. Again, most times when you guys do a job, it's not just going to be a nice rectangular room like this, right? You're going to have a hallway, you're going to have 2 bedrooms off on the side of that, it's going to come down into a bathroom, some closets, out into a kitchen, where you have to work around the island, out into the living room, and then out the front door or out the garage or whatever. So what we always do is we're going to walk that job and just talk about it, okay? And what we want to do is finish off any areas and do what we call pull a dry line, at transition points if we can do that. So that's usually, again, if I've got a hallway going down here and I've got 2 bedrooms coming off the side, right? It's not going to be very easy to jump into one of those bedrooms, and then I don't want to leave a puddle here if I'm T-barring, jump into this other bedroom, come back out, and then try to work into that other puddle. So I'm going to work this bedroom depending on which way the wood's running, right? If it's running straight across the transition of that bedroom door, I can just pull a line of finish there, right, and leave it. I don't want a puddle there. So some guys will tape it off and pull that line and then pull the tape, but we tend to just take the cut-in pad, pull it right across down that board seam, right, and then just leave it, let it dry. Now I can hop into the other bedroom, work it out, come out, and I can just pull my cut-in pad. I'll overlap it, maybe a couple hairs on that cut-in pad. So I'm overlapping just a little bit, pulling it right down that board seam, and that lets me cut that transition off so I can come back to it and I don't have to worry about managing 5 or 6 different puddles when I'm doing the T-bar application. So we'd look at that for bedrooms or any closets, or maybe it's the bathroom coming out into the hallway. sometimes even behind, say, an island in the kitchen, right? We'll cut off both sides of that and just finish the middle of it. That way we've only got the edges to work with, to worry about. We don't have to worry about jumping behind that island, finishing that out while the other guy's trying to get to the other side. We've got a couple really good floor layouts, I think, in the presentation or in the book, or we can bring them up. Some good floor layouts where we can show you, look, this is what we mean when we're talking about a game plan. First we would do this bedroom, this bathroom, this closet, behind the kitchen island here, and that would allow us, when we're really ready to get going, we can do the whole hallway, or start in that bedroom, do the hallway, run that down into the kitchen, get the other side of the island, do the dining area, out into the living room, and we're out the garage door. Okay? So walk the floor and have a game plan before you start pouring finish. We've also pre-prepped these applicators. I think Dennis will go over, proper prep, especially in new applicators, but anytime we get an applicator, even if we've been storing it, we're going to rinse it out real well. And then we get it to just damp, right? I don't want a lot of water and stuff in my applicator, especially if I'm using satin or semi-gloss finishes or some of the ultra satins. Because if I have too much moisture in here, I'm going to have shiny spots where I first start. So just take most of the moisture out of it till it's just damp. What that'll help with, I don't want it completely dry either, because then it's going to soak up a ton of finish before I ever get enough in there so it's putting it down. So we'll just do a little dry run first, again for you guys who haven't seen this before. But again, we're going to pour about a 4 or 6 inch wide line of finish all the way down our starting wall, right? Don't get it too close to the wall. Don't pour it right into your trim work, because again, it's going to run under stuff. So, pour it out here. Pour it out here a little bit away from the wall. And then the cut-in guy is going to go and cut everything in against that wall, and then maybe a little bit just up the side walls, okay? And then when we start snow plowing, we're going to set our snowplow tool here, and again, we're just going to pull it at a slight angle. Also, with any of the applicators, just fingertip pressure. We're not leaning on this thing, right? If we use the right applicator and the right pressure, we're going to get the right application rate, which most of the products is about 500 to 600 square feet per gallon. With traffic and the hardened products, it's about 400 square feet per gallon. So just fingertip pressure, and we're going to we want that puddle hitting about right in the middle. Okay? We don't want it coming up high, because if that puddle gets too high, it's going to go over the top of this, and I'm going to have a heavy streak going down my floor. Now, if that does happen, there's a way we can go back and grab that heavy spot, right? But for the most part, if we just have that puddle hit about right here, so that means we're going to be coating about 2 boards every pass. All right, so we're just going to run it down to the end. And when we get down, we're going to take our excess and we're going to pull it a little bit right here. All right, then I'm going to pat it out. And I just made a turn mark, and I want to get the turn mark out of there. So I'm going to lightly set this down, and I'm just going to do a little feather stroke. I'm going to pat it out again, set it down, start behind my puddle, start back down this way. And I get down here to the end, I'm going to pull my puddle, pat out, feather, pat out, and go. All right? Now, there's a lot of different methods that guys use for this. Some guys will never feather with this, right? The guy doing the feathering is the guy running the cut-in pad. So my job is just to keep running back and forth. It doesn't matter how many turn marks I put in it. He's cutting in ahead of me and coming in behind me doing the feathering. So some guys feather with this, some guys feather with the cut-in pad. It doesn't matter. All right? Anything else?
Yeah, so when we are using the T-bar and you have somebody cutting in, you'll notice when we go over the roller something a little bit different, but with the T-bar and the cut-in pad, we're going to want to make sure any areas that we've touched with the cut-in pad, right? So it's going to be close to the edge, off the wall. We're going to want to take that and we're going to want to work that with the grain of the wood, right? Because the nature of the cut-in pad, you're putting product down a little bit thinner, right? So we want to make sure that we're mimicking not only our T-bar, or if it's the roller, we're mimicking kind of that heavier application, but to err on the safe side, you always want to make sure that feather it with the grain of the wood, right? So as I go through and maybe I'll come out about 3 feet, I'm going to wet that area out, but then I'll just come in and I'll kind of feather it. I may pad out to make sure I don't have any excess in there. So as I push this applicator close up to that wall or that trim, I don't have to really worry about leaving a heavy spot. Then I can just feather that out, just work my way across. That gives a little bit of a buffer zone too. When Todd makes his turn, he's got that area to make that turn. And in the beginning, we'll have a little bit of excess product to make sure that we saturate these with the material. Ready to go?
Yep. A couple things too. It's always easier to coat with more than one person, right? Having 4 eyes on the job makes it easier than just having 2. So we're always going to be looking back across that job and seeing if we can see drips, heavy marks, misses, anything like that. And again, you can see that, the products are pretty clear even when you're using like oil modified and stuff that has some amber tone to it. The finishes when you're putting them down can be a little bit hard to keep track of. It's also easiest to coat or really do anything on the floor while there's still natural sunlight out. Once that sun goes down, it makes everything harder to do.
If I have excess product, I can move that down. Todd's going to kind of go over this area. But I want to make sure I'm not kind of padding out in the middle of the floor or any areas that he's not going to be able to get at. Kind of want to work with some speed. Right at first, I'm just really, again, wetting out this area. Maybe I poured my puddle a little bit close. I can pull that out a little bit. Wet out the area. Come back kind of here. Feather out this finish here.
Okay. Some guys even go to the length. Some guys like working out of kind of like modified watering cans, better than the jugs. But I think it's easiest when you pour from the jug, hold it sideways. Don't hold it straight up and down, then it tends to glug and splash and stuff. So hold it sideways, pour it out, hold it low to the floor. Tend to get a lot smoother pour when you hold it sideways. Also with your T-bar, because of its orientation, if you ever do have to lay it down, always lay it down in the same direction that the wood runs. Don't lay it down like this, because again, if it's a little too far out this way and you don't get back over that spot in time, you're going to probably see that mark going across the floor. So again, we just start our snowplow pass, right? I'm catching that puddle about right in the middle. I'm going to come down to the end. I'm going to pull my puddle down there, pat out, short feather stroke, pat out, catch that puddle. You can also, if you get more finish or you have too much finish in one place, you can adjust the angle of your T-bar, right, to drag a little bit of this puddle down there further or vice versa. If you don't have hardly any finish here, pour some more finish. But learn to use that angle of your applicator to move your finish puddle around too as you need it.
I'll leapfrog back and forth. So I did an area, Todd, I'm up to about here.
Okay.
I'll come down here, and now I'm going to need to cut in this area so he's ready when he comes back. Clearly on a smaller floor, it actually becomes a little bit more difficult because he's going to be here a lot quicker.
So usually I'm walking faster than this too, right? But you can walk at, at a normal pace. You don't want to be running across the floor. You don't want to be going too slow. If I see a streak, and usually the only times we get those when we do the gym floors, it's just inevitable that you get a lot of finish on the floor. If I see something, again, within the next couple passes, I can go ahead and put this down and just run it, lightly. I'm kind of holding it off the floor. I can feel it touching, but I may not want full pressure. Just run it down that streak and spread everything out a little more evenly, okay? And that'll help you smooth things out.
My cutting pad, if it's a bigger area and I have some time, I can leave it as an indicator so Todd will know, hey, this is where I stopped. If I am holding it, I always want to be holding it kind of horizontally Anytime you start to hold it on an angle and you start talking, all that finish is going to draw down and start dripping. And I won't be holding it over a puddle, I'll be holding it behind me and making a mess. So keep it flat. I'm also kind of the eyes, another set of eyes, so in between I can look out and make sure that there's no missed areas, whether I missed it, Todd missed it. Maybe I can go back and cut that area in.
Another thing we have to do with T-barring, and it's why I really prefer the roller method the most over any applicator. No matter how clean we think we got the floor, there's still little pieces of garbage or debris or stuff here and there. As I pull this puddle across the floor, all that stuff's going to start getting gathered up in the puddle, right? So what do I got to be careful about is, where am I exiting? If I'm going out the front door, I got to be really careful when I get there. I'm probably going to soak up all that finish in my last puddle, because I don't want to just smooth that out with all the debris in it and have the homeowner see that the first thing when they get in. Otherwise, they're going to get out their little pad of 3M sticky notes, right? And they're going to crawl all over that floor, and every place they see a little speck, they're going to put one of those things for me to see tomorrow when I come back to the job. With the roller, the roller never picks the puddle up. It just disperses everything right there. So I may have a speck over there, a speck here, a speck there. But with the T-bar, I'm gathering all my specks up in the puddle, right? And I'm going to deposit them all right where I end.
I'm also going to keep an eye on the puddle. Make sure that it's staying well filled, well puddled.
And if something happened where, I got too much finish here, or sometimes if you have a really big room, whenever we're doing the sport floors, our puddle always ends up going like this, because we always start right next to the wall, and then we sweep it out a little bit into the field, and then we're always getting closer to that opposite wall. So if I get too much of a puddle here, or I get my line is really kind of off center, I can always start, bring this down, pull it in here, and kind of do a little feathering where I want to end, and just move that puddle a little bit. And again, just fingertip pressure. Probably the biggest mistake we see guys make with any of the applicators is they're pressing on them. Just again, kind of like the machines, let the applicator do the work for you. Just fingertip pressure. You're just trying to guide that puddle and get that finish distributed in a pretty even fashion, and let the finish and the applicator do the rest for you. And why don't you go ahead and cut down the wall.
Okay.
Or why don't you cut in like those first two sections down the wall, and I'll snowplow to there and then cut in that. Yeah.
Wait, repeat that.
So just cut in down the wall, down those first two little sections. Yeah.
Oh.
So this is the probably the hardest part with the T-bar, is working yourself out of a room, right? Up to this point, really, it's easy, going back and forth, just moving that puddle. I mean, it really puts it down nice, since, most, if not all of any marks are going in the same direction as the wood. Easy to put down a really nice coat with the T-bar up to this point. Now I got to work my way out of the room. Some guys work their way out of a room just with cut-in pad, okay? Some guys will roll out of the room, even if they're doing most of the floor with the T-bar. But there are ways, easy ways to work yourself out with the T-bar. It just takes a little bit of practice. But this will also, this also comes into effect when you're talking about your game plan. Where are we going to work ourselves out? Because if there's any place that you might tend to leave more marks with this tool, it's working your way out of the room. So especially when you're looking at those main focal points when the homeowner or the floor owner walks back in, right? If it's in through the garage and they have poor lighting there, they might not see as much. If it's right at the front door, you know, they're going to see everything that you do working your way out. So you might want to consider that too on where are we working out, how is the lighting, you know, how much extra care are we going to have to take as we work our way out to make sure there's no marks in the floor. So how you typically work your way out is what we call S-turns and push-pulling with our feathering. So you're just taking your finish. Again, we're still distributing it out. And don't get too far ahead of yourself because I got to go back and feather all my turns up there, okay? So some guys like to push away and feather or reach out and pull back. I don't think there's, you know, good or bad either way. It just depends on what you're comfortable with. So when I reach out, one, I'm going to pat it out really well before I reach out. Because if I have a big puddle, if this is loaded with finish, and I reach out and I pull away from that, I'm probably going to leave a mark. Okay? So if I pad that out, reach out, as soon as I feel it touch, I'm pulling it back. Okay? And I'm not letting it touch all the way. I can feel it touch, and I'm starting to feather it back in and then pull it back. This is also usually where I step in the finish when I'm push-pulling my way out. And it's actually one of the reasons why I take my shoes off when I finish is I want to know when I step in it, right? With your socks on, you know when you stepped in the finish. With your shoes on, you don't know if you're leaving tracks all over the place. So I can go buy some new socks, or I can just use them as waterproof socks now, but I want to know when I stepped in the finish, and you just can't with your shoes on.
You're cut in just on the left.
I just walked in the cut in?
Nope, no close up.
Not trying to prove a point. This is also where good communication with you and the cut-in guy comes into play on how much finish is on the floor. Right? There are definitely times when we've ended up with, you know, a lot of extra finish. So that's, again, one place the towel can come in handy. Or I wish I had stock in Home Depot rags because we have bought tens of thousands of Home Depot rags since I've been here, mainly to sop up extra finish and stuff when we're putting down finish.
You're cut in 3 boards to the 3 boards out.
Okay. Okay, again, some guys will push their way, okay? So they're going to push and feather like that. Get down here, you want to make sure you don't grab any of that puddle. But I think either way works fine. And then when we get to the end, you know, I'll probably make one more little pass here. We typically always finish off with just the cut-in pad. So make sure you have something at your doorway to put your applicators in. Either a paint tray or, you know, a nice little plastic trash can works well. Oh yeah, I stepped in it. So again, now we're going to do the detail work where I've got, if I have to sop up any finish because I see a bunch of debris in it, if I have to pour down some fresh finish so that I can have a nice finishing coat right there at the end, we'll do that. Looks like we might have a little bit extra finish, but not too bad.
Yep. So we do have some debris in here, especially if this is really any coat, but our final coat, and this was chock full of debris because we're starting off, you know, the far corner of the house, and we're T-barring basically everything all the way across, right? We're picking up all that dirt and debris. This puddle here is gonna be pretty messy, right? Exceptional tack job, so really it's pretty clean. But what we'd want to do is soak that up and pour some new product down. Why? This is the first spot that the homeowner is going to go. Right? They're going to walk in, they're going to, my floors are done, I can walk on them. They look down, and now they see a bunch of garbage on the floor. So as Todd said, now that blue tape comes out and they're going to look everywhere for that garbage, right? So we could just soak up that excess finish, right? You can either use a rag, right? Make sure we get all that excess kind of garbage out of there. You can use your cut-in pad and the paint tray and then just kind of squeegee it out. Now I'm going to pour out some new product. I'm going to wet out that area. Maybe I've got a doorway here, a transition, so I'm going to have the door open as I'm coating, and I'm going to have to coat that behind the door first, work my way, around the door, etc. It's not going to be as easy breezy as we have right here, but I'm going to feather out any potential mark that I might get in the floor.
This can also be a little bit tricky, especially if you're working out like the front door or the back door, someplace directly into the outside, especially if it's windy that day, right? You really got to have your game plan. You got to keep that door closed until you get to that, final 12 inches. So working your way around that and stuff and making sure you know exactly, hey, when we get to the front door, the back door, here's what we got to do, and you got to do it quick so you don't lock any marks in the floor. Also at this point, if you see something, out here, whatever, usually best just leave it alone, right? Don't start reaching into the finish. You're probably going to cause more problems than you started with, and it's going to take even more time after it dries. The stuff is really pretty good at leveling and flowing and everything else. So if you've cut off all your airflow off, you've got good drying conditions, just let it do the best it can to lay down. It's much easier to come back than after it's dried and use, some abrasives or the nib file or whatever I might need to, shave down a heavy spot or get rid of a bump, or if I have a holiday, to come back just with a foam brush and paint that in. But don't start touching stuff, and don't let the homeowner watch you coat either, right? Make them leave. That's when you want to come in with like the full OSHA suit on, right? With the full respirator and everything else, and say, yeah, you might want to leave while I do this. But yeah, don't let them watch the finish dry. And also, I forget who I was talking to, but they said especially like with traffic or any of the satins or the ultra mattes, they're really scary to watch dry, right? Because they start just as shiny as this, but they go through so many stages while they're drying that even now, if I watch it dry, I'm thinking, something's happening over there. Just go away. Go away and come back in 3 or 4 hours and be amazed, right?